the 149th day of class, and we are beginning a new unit. We took the exam yesterday, and I hope you all did very well. And before we move on to our new unit, let us say goodbye to our old unit. Dear old Unit 5. So what are we going to say goodbye to? Well, I'm going to move myself close to the units. I feel closer to it now. That's nice. Say goodbye to the time of 1900 to 1945, global conflicts, World War I, World War II, the subsequent genocides that went on during that time, the casualties, the destruction, the militarism, all of that stuff. Say goodbye to that. And say goodbye to economic instability, the 5 causes of the global Great Depression. Goodbye. Political movements, communism, and fascism, and all those isms. Goodbye to you. And goodbye to the new technology that both benefited and imperiled mankind. So logically, we are done with Unit 5, so we're going to go to Unit 6. And let's check out what Unit 6 has to hold. I'm going to scroll down. And here's what Unit 6 has to hold. So last unit had 4 items. This has 3 items. Cold War. So what happened after World War II? From World War II till about 1989, 90, 91, 92, that was the Cold War. It did end. Ended when I was a senior in high school. Thank goodness for that. Democratization. The root word is democracy. Communism loses. Democracy wins. Thank goodness. So we see the rise of democracy in the world. And decolonization. Former colonies of imperial powers become free. You put these 3 things together, we have a new world order, they call it. 1945 to 2000. Now, if you look at those years, there are people alive right now, and they lived during those years. And we're finally at a point in history where instead of getting it from me or reading it from a book, you can get it right from the horse's mouth. You can get it from a primary source. And that's what I'm going to have you do right off the bat. First thing, this has the potential to be the coolest thing we do all year. And I really believe that in my heart of hearts. And let me explain to you why. I'm going to share with you 2 emails from former students why we do this project. And this one's dated June 19th, 2016. It's to me. And he wrote, I would just like to thank you for a great school year and for also assigning us with the StoryCorps project. 2 days after doing this interview with my grandmother, she had an almost fatal stroke. She's getting better but has a long way to go. I'd just like to thank you because if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have seen her in a while before this happened. Also wouldn't have had a good talk with her before this happened. Hopefully she gets back to her old goofy ways again. Thank you. And I was very touched when I received this email. I was very appreciative of this. And this one is dated March of 2018. Hi, Mr. Sauce. The StoryCorps we did last year is very helpful to our family because in January of this year we lost my grandpa to ALS. And now in March, thinking about him, I remember we did the StoryCorps and now we are sitting here listening to him. It means a lot to us that we can hear his voice once again because of a 10th grade project. So we just wanted to say thank you. And the nature of the beast is there are people that we know, people that we love, and they are not around forever. So to preserve their voices, so your kids and your grandkids can hear their voices, this is a very, very powerful thing. And what's great about StoryCorps is once you get that interview, it will be backed up by the Library of Congress. And think about this. When you're my age or older, imagine this, playing your grandparents to your grandchildren. This spans 4 or 5 generations if done right. So it's a very, very meaningful project the way I see it. So that's why we're doing this project. Now, in terms of how do we get onto it, most likely it's going to be your phone, but here's the link. It's real easy. You get the app on your phone, and this organization is called StoryCorps, and they archive histories. And if you want to check it out, you can click in subject matter, you can click in whatever, and you can putz around with the site and see it. Most likely it's going to be on your phone because that's where you're going to be recording your interviews. And I wanted you to think about some topics because a lot of it's going to be personal, but there's going to be a history intertwined with that. So I want you to have a base knowledge of these terms when you're giving the interview, you understand what's going on. So if you're talking to somebody who is older, somebody who was born in the 1920s, 1930s, the Second World War is going to be in the mix. The bomb's going to be in the mix. What was America like after the war? Here's an easy question. How did America change from their youth? The 50s, maybe the Korean War, the Eisenhower years. What was it like during the Cold War? hydrogen bomb, the 60s, the Cold War, Kennedy and Johnson administrations, Nixon, the Vietnam, the civil rights movement, Detroit riots of 67. Maybe one of the better interviews I ever had was somebody who was a really heavy-duty Tiger fan. I was talking about the 68 Tigers where they won the World Series, but it was interspersed with the 67 riots. And my student did a wonderful job, knew a lot about the riots, and it made for a very good interview. I can just envision what the interview would sound like if, hey, in the 67 riots, huh? What happened there? I mean, have a little base knowledge so you can do your thing. And the interviews must be with somebody born in 1953 or before and be a minimum of 10 minutes long. Now, the beautiful thing about oral histories is that they are authentic, and I hope you use it to connect with somebody on a very deep level. And what I've seen in the past is that students have kind of a sterile relationship with a relative. You see them at family functions. Hi, how are you? How's school? Fine, fine. It's a very surface relationship. And once they give an interview to that person, they become close and they open themselves up. And I'm, dealing with young people every day. I'm talking to young people. I don't think you really get legacy when you're young. I certainly didn't when I was young. But we'll all get to a point where we are old, and all that knowledge, all that wisdom, everything that has happened to us, we want to pass it on. We want to get it across to somebody before it's, our time to go. And I want it to be real. And you don't have to sanitize anything. These are authentic, and I have had some interviews where the person's a real character and just making a bunch of jokes. I have some that have had tears, very deep, very intense, people missing loved ones. I've had people with foul mouths. I mean, foul mouths. So be it. It's real. What I'm looking for is real, authentic. But I want somebody who's older and 10 minutes long. Now, that is a fairly simple criterion to how to do it. Now, I'm going to share with you some questions that have worked really well in the past with people. And the StoryCorps organization has provided this. Thank you, StoryCorps. And I'm going to go to a page right here. Question to ask anyone. And what was the happiest moment of your life, the saddest? What was the biggest influence on your life? What lessons did you learn? How has your life been different from what you imagined? And you can go through this list and you can go back to my site. But the one that has hit pay dirt the most, the one that has really given people a green light to talk would be, if you could do everything again, what would you do differently? And that's the lament of a human life. We all live a life and we make mistakes. We have regrets. I certainly have regrets, and I've certainly made mistakes. And I try to impart what I've learned to my students, to my own children. And oftentimes, that really hits pay dirt. Another great question I've seen work very well is the question when you ask them, potentially this interview we're having today, I will play to my grandchildren 50 years from now. What do you want to tell 2 generations from now that you think they should know? Something to that effect. And those hit pay dirt as well. So those are fantastic questions to ask your interviewee. Now, a couple tips that I've learned, and I've been interviewed. I have interviewed somebody. I have listened to many of my students' StoryCorps. So believe me when I tell you, follow these ground rules. You will appreciate it. Number 1, it seems simple. Go to a quiet place. One of the worst ones I ever heard was in a very crowded restaurant. You could hear side conversation. You could hear the plates clanking and all that. It really made for a bad interview. Do it someplace quiet. Turn off your phones. That drives me nuts to hear an interview, something that I was hoping was very profound and meaningful. Then I hear a cell phone go off and, oh, hey, I got a snap. Ooh, I got an Instagram. Don't be that person. During that time with your interviewee, be present. Be present of mind. Be present of body. Be quick. And please do that. And number 2, phone equidistant. Seems simple, but you'll have a bad interview otherwise. So, for instance, if I put my phone that's recording the interview underneath my interviewee's chin, I'm not going to hear you giving the questions very well, and vice versa. You put it underneath your chin, I hear you loud, so what was it like for you as a kid? Well, and it's real soft on their end. Don't want to have that. Body language and tone. You have to set the tone of the interview. And be very attentive. Shoulders forward, eye contact. Be interested in what the person's saying. If you're fiddling around, you're looking the other way, and your arms are folded, it doesn't set the tone. And you have to establish some basic ground rules. Where you are, who you're talking to. And it seems a little ridiculous, and there's always a lot of giggles when it's somebody you know very well. But for the record, can you please state your name? My name is Anthony Salsiccioli. We are, and then the person can say, we are doing this interview in Livonia, Michigan on May 19th, 2018, and establish the ground rules, real basic thing, but seem interested, and read the interviewee. Some of these interviews will be almost nonchalant, back and forth, easygoing conversations. Sometimes people will bring up things that are hurtful and painful. One of the more profound interviews I heard was an older woman who was black in the South in the 30s and 40s, and she spoke of Jim Crow America and how hard it was for her as a little girl, and to feel very mistreated by people. Very serious. Others were very silly, and they're telling funny jokes. Read the interview. If they give you serious, give them serious back. If they're giving funny, you give funny back. You have to read the interviewee and have some basic historical knowledge. I already spoke of that. I want real authentic history. Don't sanitize it. Have your questions prepared. Now, on the StoryCorps app, there's a rectangle that says prepare your interview. And once you do that, it gives you a series of questions. And if you like the question, you check mark it. If you don't use it. Now, I've had some interviews where people go down the line, question. It works for them. Sometimes they've asked one question and it just deviates off the path. Unlike a good classroom experience where the teacher stays on task, you might get off the path, but that is okay. That's where the really cool, insightful moments lie. It can be in a different language. If you speak a different language, if the interviewee speaks a different language, that's fine. That is absolutely fine. Now, obviously, I can't understand it, but I'm going to trust you that you're going to do due diligence and make it good. And it's important to you. And if your relative or the person you're interviewing speaks a different language, don't dismiss that. It's important. They can give you insights in any language. Again, 10 minutes minimum, and this is the deadline for this particular year. But I'm giving you until the end of the school year. And it's a test grade, very easy test grade. And I think this is the only time of the year where I'm saying one assignment is equivalent to a test grade. The reason why I'm being so heavy about it, I really want you to do it. I feel in my heart of hearts, when you are my age, you are going to be glad that you have this. My talks with my grandmother before she passed are hugely, hugely important to me, very meaningful to me, and I'm glad I had them, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. And I certainly wish StoryCorps was around when she was alive so I could have that digitized version of the interview that can be saved in perpetuity to be shared, with people into the future. So again, this is StoryCorps. I'm going to ask you to really do your best work, follow those ground rules that I said, and I'm going to move this over here. And I'm really looking forward to hearing these, and I hope that you take it seriously, because this has the potential, again, to be the coolest thing that we do. So thank you for watching.